Hey you guys, it's Peter! I'm back! Of course I'm back. I'm not going anywhere. I'm YouTube famous now. Famouser now. Alright you guys, I wanted to do a little bit of a story time today. It's not really like a funny story time. It's more of like kind of an educational story time. But I talk so much on my channel about being sober, being in recovery, and I also talk a lot about having epilepsy. And so a lot of people have sent me direct messages thanking me for talking about epilepsy. Either they have epilepsy or they have seizure disorder, and they are embarrassed by it, which is surprising to me because it's a medical condition. And you know, they don't really know how to talk to people about it. They don't know how to explain it to people. And so I thought I'm just going to do a video on here explaining what happened to me and my story time about my seizures and all that kind of stuff. And then, you know, hopefully it'll help somebody out there. Maybe it'll educate somebody out there, because we're still, you know, in the day and time when people think that you're supposed to like roll somebody on their side and put a wooden spoon in their mouth. Don't. That's not what you do, okay? And if you do that, it's either you're uneducated or you don't know what to do when somebody's having a seizure. But listen, one of the things I did want to talk about is there's epilepsy and seizure disorder, which is a neurological issue. But then people also have seizures because they're, you know, coming off of drugs. They're having some kind of, you know, medical, physical response to something in their life, like an overdose or something that they've eaten. And so they're two separate things. So you can have seizures without having epilepsy and seizure disorder. And it's really important to know the two. But I do want to say this. I was kind of joking about the wooden spoon and putting people on the side. What you really should do if somebody is having a seizure, okay, or they're seizing, and what you'll notice is that they're having like muscle spasms and their eyes will probably flitter a little bit, and a lot of times they foam at the mouth or they urinate on themselves. If they're doing that, what you want to do is you want to lower them to the floor softly, okay? Put something soft underneath their head like a pillow. Roll them a little bit onto the side, so that they can breathe, and like if anything comes out of their mouth, they don't choke on it and things like that. And then you want to call 911. That's what you want to do. And you just want to sit with them and be calm and say, you're going to be okay, you're going to be okay. Because a lot of times they come out of it into consciousness and they don't really know what's going on, okay? No, PP. A lot of times they come out of it and they don't really know what's going on. So you want to, you know, be there for them and be like soft and soothing and compassionate, if that makes sense. So, one of the things that's interesting that PP's right here next to me, I am a believer that dogs sense things about people, and you know, we have, you know, service dogs for lots of different reasons, and there are actually service dogs out there that are seizure dogs. And one of the things that's interesting about PP is that I haven't had an active seizure in since I was 27, so 15, 16 years. But I do get seizure activity where I can feel it, where I can feel my body tremble, or I can feel myself jerk. And when that happens, like PP always, if we're laying in bed, stands on my chest. And so a lot of times when he stands on my chest, I'm kind of like, uh-oh, I need to be careful, right? So anyway, let me tell you what my story is. When I was about 26 years old, I was working in a treatment facility. And so I worked around a lot of teenagers who, you know what teenagers do. They mock, they make fun, and stuff like that. So I would be sitting in group therapy and I would kind of like have eye twitches, or I would like roll my shoulders and do weird stuff, and they would like imitate me, right? And I didn't even really recognize that I was doing it. The other thing is that I think I wasn't diagnosed when I was growing up as having ADHD, but I don't think it will surprise anybody that I probably have severe ADHD. Today I use it as an asset in my life. But I also have what people wanted to call ADD, because I do staring spells. And that's where, like, if you're sitting there talking to me, like, sometimes, like, I literally fade off. And, like, it can come back, and I don't really remember where I was or what we were talking about. I haven't had that in quite some time, but I used to have that a lot. And so anyway, around 26, I started having all of this kind of, like, weird behavior happen, and noticeably in my work. And one of the things that would happen, I wanted to demonstrate this for you guys, was that I would be like standing there talking to somebody in the hallway holding a cup of coffee, like a paper cup of coffee, right? And I'd be standing there and all of a sudden I would go, well, I would do things that looked a lot like what people thought was Tourette syndrome, like without the shouting out of the profanity, which not all people with Tourette syndrome do, but some of them, they have the jerks and the spasms. It's very consistent with Tourette syndrome. But what I would have looked like Tourette syndrome, where I would go like that, or I would, like, if I had a cup of coffee and I was like talking to you, I would go like that. And where I would come back, literally after 10 seconds, I would be standing here not holding the cup of coffee, and I wouldn't know what was happening to me. And like the person in front of me, I know this sounds funny, but it's really not. The person in front of me would be like soaked with coffee and like, oh, what did you just do? Or like they would look at me like really concerned or whatever. And that happened to me a lot between 26 and 27. A little unknown fact you need to know about me, which I think is really important, is epilepsy a lot of times is genetic. We just don't know. There's a lot we don't know about epilepsy and other neurological disorders. And my grandfather on my mother's side, my mom's dad, died when she was 4. So we don't know a lot about his medical history. We do know that he was probably a severe alcoholic because he worked in a bar and he smoked a lot because he died of lung cancer at 39. So as far as that, we don't really know a lot about his medical history. A lot of times epilepsy skips generations, it jumps and things like that. Not necessarily, but it does. The other thing you need to know is that I got sober at 22 years old. When I was 19 years old, I was walking across the street at 3 o'clock in the morning, completely wasted out of my mind. And I got hit by a van that was going like 55, 60 miles an hour. And I was thrown in the air and I landed on the back of my head. They told me that had I not been so wasted drunk and just like a jellyfish, that I would have landed as a board and died instantly. But since I just was like this, I kind of like my neck went back and forth like this. But when I did go and see a neurologist and I did get diagnosed with epilepsy, which I'll tell you how it happened in a second, because it's really scary how it had happened to me. When I did, he said, you know, it may have been a result of some kind of head injury that you had as a result of your substance, like when drinking and getting hit by the van. It may be genetic from your grandfather. It may be as a result of you using a lot of substances like cocaine and hallucinogens. We just don't know a lot about what cocaine, hallucinogens, ecstasy pills, things like that due to a brain over a long period of time. I also huffed a lot back in the day, inhalants. So we don't know really what substances do. And today, one of the things I speak a lot about in public is the dangers of drugs and alcohol that we're unaware of. Because I mean, I never believed getting drunk, snorting cocaine, that 10 years later I would be an epileptic. In fact, I think it's kind of like God's joke on me a little bit, if that makes sense, because I remember when I was in high school, there was this girl that was in one of my classes and she had epilepsy. I talked a lot about this because I believe in karmic energy a little bit. And she had epilepsy and she would have seizures in class and I would just roll and laugh and make fun of this girl. To 10 years later get diagnosed with epilepsy, I mean, come on. I don't believe in coincidences. So anyway, I mean, maybe a little bit, but that's just bizarre, isn't it? And I've reached out to that girl and since made up for it and apologized because I just feel horrible. But anyway, so at 27, I was having these kind of, spastic energy like all the time. Like it started happening to me like literally like 20, 30 times a day, to the point where I knew I probably shouldn't be getting in a car, but I didn't want to tell anybody because I was terrified. Like I wouldn't want to tell somebody I didn't want to get in a car because I knew it was going to compromise my work. So I didn't know like how I was going to get to work and things like that. So I used to work Tuesday through Saturday. One Saturday morning on my way to work, and I lived about 10 minutes away at that point, I had probably about 3 of these things on the way to work where I was like driving and the next second I would be like this. And missing time. Very scary, you guys, that I was behind the wheel of a car, okay? And I think a lot of times when we have medical conditions like that, we're so afraid of the outcome that we don't want to get honest with somebody because, like, I am not a good doctor's son. I do not go to the doctor a lot. I've had laryngitis for like 3 weeks. I finally called my dad today and asked him, what was going on with me. And he was like, we need to do this, we need to do that. I'm just not a good doctor's son, right? Because I'm very terrified of the outcome. And so I think that was what was going on for me. I didn't really want to know how serious it was, but I knew at that point that something very serious was happening. So I came into work that morning and I walked in the front door and I was talking to the receptionist and I had another one and she just kind of looked at me and I was like, I can't stay, I can't work. I said, can you call my supervisor and tell her she's gonna have to come in and work? And she said, please, yes. And she said, please do not leave. And I said, I'm not going to. And she was like, just stay right there. And she called my supervisor. My supervisor got on the phone with me. She said, please do not leave. I will drive you home. I want you to be safe. Do not leave. Well, I like to just be home and in my bed and safe, okay? And so I was like, no, I promise, I'll stay here, I'll stay here, I'll stay here. So she's on her way in to drive me home and then run group therapy for me. Nicest woman in the world, right? And I'm like walking out to the parking lot. I'm like, I'm going home. I want to go home. I want to go home. I want to be in my bed. I was sobbing in the parking lot. I was like, I cannot believe this is happening, you guys. And like between the receptionist desk and my car, I had like two more of these things where it was like that. I mean, they were just coming on all the time where it was like, it feels like a jolt of electricity goes through your body. So I was like, I am 5 to 10 minutes from home. I'll take side streets. I'll make it there. Well, so I took this side street through Indianapolis that at one point parallels the interstate, okay? So I'm coming around this curve. There's 3 cars coming at me, and there's a yellow light in between. And this is right where it parallels with the interstate. I will never forget this, you guys. I looked at those 3 cars coming, and I said, please, God, let me make it home. And the next thing I remembered, I was in the back of an ambulance, okay? So let me tell you what happened. I went in front of those 3 cars. They swerved into the grass. I went down a ditch, up a ditch. I was driving a Nissan Pathfinder with my seatbelt on. They said if I wasn't driving a Nissan Pathfinder, which they should do a commercial with me and give me a free car. I was driving a Nissan Xterra, actually. And I had a seatbelt on. They said if I didn't have my seatbelt on and I wasn't driving that exact car, I probably would be dead. I did not have a scratch on me. Down the ditch, up the 10-foot ditch, down the ditch, up the ditch, through the guardrail. I took the guardrail out, flipped my car onto the other side of the interstate, okay? Slid across 6 lanes and was sitting sideways. Stopped traffic 30 miles at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. So I come to in the back of the interstate, or in the back of the ambulance, nicest EMT guy in the entire world. My heart rate, I can literally feel it, is like, like that. I mean, I was scared to death, right? He's like, you're gonna be fine. We're gonna need the emergency room. You're gonna be, I was like, I can't breathe. 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 And the next thing I know, I'm out again, right? They shoot me up with some shit to calm my ass down probably. And I wake up in the hospital. And, so anyway, they come in, and what had happened was I had gone to so many neurologists at that point, and they couldn't spot what it was. But because I had the seizure activity at that moment, they could track it within 30 minutes of putting me in an MRI and doing an EKG or an E, whatever that is, where they put the things in your head, and they tracked the seizure activity and they identified that I had epilepsy. And the kind of epilepsy that I have is called, I will read it to you right now. I just had it up. Juvenile myoclonic epilepsy, or JME. And I want to read you the definition. It's a form of epilepsy that starts in people in childhood or adolescence. People with this disorder experience muscle twitching or jerking. They may also have other seizure types, including full-blown convulsive seizures, grand mal seizures, or absent seizure staring spells, which I had all of those, right? I also was diagnosed with chronic migraine disorder. So there is never a day that goes by that I don't have what to you would probably be a 6 or a 7 or an 8 as far as like a headache. But anyway, at that point, I was medicated. I take 1,500 milligrams of Depakote a day, which is these 3 horse pills. I've taken that since I was 27 years old. I'm not embarrassed of having epilepsy. I talk very proudly about it. I educate everybody around me on my epilepsy so that they can help me if something happens. And I wasn't able to drive my car for 6 months or a year, I can't remember. But now I drive just fine. I'm medically managed by a neurologist, and I go in for annual checkups to make sure everything's fine and everything like that. So epilepsy isn't something that anybody has to be scared of. Seizure disorder isn't anything that anybody needs to be scared of. I don't think any medical condition that we have, we should be ashamed of, embarrassed of, or scared of, you know? That's just my story, and I'm sure other people have other stories where they grew up with it. It was weird at my age being 27 and one day finding out that I had epilepsy. Like, that's weird, right? Because I didn't know my whole life, whereas other people that I know that are epileptic grew up with it. But as long as I continue to take care of myself, and like flashing lights and that kind of stuff don't really bother me, disco lights, that stuff doesn't bother me. As long as I feel healthy, there are days that I don't, that I just need to stay at home, but as long as I stay healthy, take my medication, and talk to my doctor regularly, I'm fine, and so will you be. So anyway, I hope that helps somebody. I hope that educated you a little bit. You learn a little bit more about me. It's just part of who I am. It isn't who I am. It doesn't define me. It's just part of who I am. I just have to take some medicine for the rest of my life, and I should be fine, you know? Anyway, I hope you guys like that story. Follow me on all my social media. If you like this video, please give it a like, sub, and subscribe to my channel. I love you guys, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.